Oil prices have suffered a historic collapse since 1991 after Saudi Arabia slashed prices, then shocked the market by launching a price war against Russia.
Saudi Arabia to do it for Monica. They cannot manage the market by themselves.
Saudi Arabia says it's planning to boost oil production capacity for the first time in more than a decade.
For half a century, one country has basically held the keys to the global economy with the power to make it hum or bring it to a grinding halt. Saudi Arabia, the undisputed king of oil, its moves inside OPEC can make or break fortunes, stabilize entire nations, or plunge them into chaos. But a storm is brewing in the Persian Gulf, and the challenge isn't coming from a rival superpower, it's coming from its own backyard. A tiny nation, long content to live in the shadow of its colossal neighbor, is making a bold play to flip the whole board over. Armed with reports of stunning new discoveries and a multi-billion-dollar war chest, this country is on a path to unleash a flood of oil that could shake the very foundations of OPEC. This could ignite a price war that threatens to consume the architects of Saudi Arabia's power. Forget green energy for a second. This is a story about the brutal final war of the oil age. And it all starts with the quiet, calculated ambitions of Kuwait. Section 1. The Kuwaiti Gambit. To get why this is such a big deal, you first have to understand Kuwait. For most, it's a small, absurdly wealthy Gulf state, a key ally of the West and a founding member of OPEC. It's sitting on roughly 100 billion barrels of oil reserves, a staggering amount for a country smaller than New Jersey. For decades, it's been a reliable, if occasionally grumpy, member of the oil cartel, happy to follow the lead of its big brother, Saudi Arabia. But under the surface, that loyalty is starting to crack. Lately, the state-owned Kuwait Oil Company has been making waves with announcements of major offshore discoveries. In July 2024, news broke about the Al Nokatha field, followed by a discovery at the Al Jalaya field in January 2025. Together, these finds are estimated to hold billions of barrels of oil equivalent, adding a huge new resource to Kuwait's already massive reserves. Discovering oil is one thing, what you plan to do with it is another, and Kuwait's plans are nothing short of a declaration of intent. Buried within its official 2040 strategy is a single explosive goal: to crank up its crude oil production capacity to 4 million barrels per day by 2035. To put that in perspective, Kuwait's current capacity is around 2.9 to 3 million barrels per day. This isn't a minor tweak, it's a colossal expansion, a plan to add more than 1 million barrels of daily production to the global market. To pull this off, Kuwait is getting ready to pour hundreds of billions of dollars into its energy sector, with plans to invest up to $10 billion a year for the next 5 years in its domestic upstream sector alone. This isn't just talk. It's a funded, state-backed strategy to fundamentally change its place in the world. But here's the rub. In the world that Saudi Arabia has so carefully constructed, there is no room for an extra 1 million barrels of Kuwaiti oil. Bringing that much new production online without a coordinated cut from somewhere else would shatter the core principle of the OPEC alliance and the delicate balance that keeps oil prices stable. It's a direct, calculated challenge to the authority of the cartel and, by extension, to its leader, Saudi Arabia. The question is no longer if Kuwait can do this, but if it will. And for that answer, you have to look at history. Section 2. The King's Dilemma and the Rules of the Cartel. You've heard of OPEC. It's often called a cartel, and let's be honest, that's pretty much what it is. Its main job is to manage the supply of oil to control its price. The method is simple. Each member country gets a production quota, a cap on how much they can pump and sell. If prices are too low, OPEC agrees to cut production, shrinking supply, and pushing prices up. If prices get too high and threaten the global economy, they can agree to pump more. In theory, it creates stability for everyone. But at the heart of this system is a basic tension. Every member wants the highest possible price for its oil, but each is also tempted to secretly produce more than its quota to rake in more cash for itself. The whole system runs on trust and discipline, and for 50 years, one country has been the undisputed enforcer, making sure everyone follows the rules: Saudi Arabia. As the largest producer with the most spare capacity, Saudi Arabia is OPEC's swing producer. If other nations overproduce, Riyadh can punish them by opening its own taps and flooding the market, crashing the price for everyone. If cuts are needed, Saudi Arabia often takes on the biggest share of the burden. This power gives it enormous political and economic leverage. It is the king of oil, and the quotas are its royal decrees. Right now, Saudi Arabia needs that power more than ever. The kingdom is in a frantic race against time called Vision 2030. It's a breathtakingly ambitious plan to diversify its economy away from oil by building futuristic cities, a massive tourism industry, and new tech sectors. This transformation is astronomically expensive, and it's being funded almost entirely by oil money. For Vision 2030 to have any chance of succeeding, Saudi Arabia needs oil prices to stay high and stable. A price war is the last thing it can afford, as it would gut the very revenues it needs to escape its oil addiction. And this creates the king's dilemma. Its greatest weapon, the ability to crash the oil market, is now something it can't really use without shooting itself in the foot. A very, very expensive foot, and Kuwait knows this. This isn't the first time Kuwait has tested the patience of its neighbors. In the late 1980s, both Kuwait and the UAE were famous for blowing past their OPEC quotas. They had the oil and they wanted the money. This blatant rule-breaking infuriated other members, especially Iraq, which was struggling to rebuild after its devastating war with Iran. Baghdad accused Kuwait of waging economic warfare by tanking prices. These quota wars became a key driver of the animosity that eventually led to Iraq's catastrophic invasion of Kuwait in 1990. The memory of that war may have faded, but the underlying dynamics haven't. Kuwait has a history of putting its own interests first, and it has shown before that it's willing to risk massive geopolitical instability to do it. Section 3. The price of rebellion. So what happens if Kuwait actually goes for it? What if it pushes its production to 4 million barrels a day and just puts it all on the market, daring Saudi Arabia to react? This is where things escalate from a regional rivalry to a global economic thriller, with 3 potential terrifying scenarios. Scenario 1, a simple price collapse. The global oil market is a finely tuned machine. An extra 1 million barrels a day, unannounced and uncoordinated, would create a massive supply glut overnight. Traders would panic and the price of oil could plummet. For oil importing countries, this might sound great: cheaper gas, lower inflation. But the shock would destabilize energy markets across the globe, bankrupting smaller producers and possibly triggering a financial crisis in countries that depend entirely on oil revenue. It would be a self-inflicted wound for Kuwait, but one it might be willing to take if it means locking in a bigger market share for good. This brings us to scenario 2, the much more aggressive option, the Saudi response. Think back to the price war of 2020. Russia had refused to agree to OPEC-led production cuts. In response, Saudi Arabia did the unthinkable. It opened the floodgates and slashed its prices, launching a direct assault on Russia's market share. For the first time in history, prices briefly crashed into negative territory. It was a brutal, shocking display of power, reminding the world who still held the ultimate weapon. The kingdom could do the same to Kuwait. It could match Kuwait's production increase, and then some. With an estimated maximum sustainable capacity of around 12 million barrels per day, Saudi Arabia can outproduce anyone. It could trigger a race to the bottom, pushing prices so low that Kuwait's new projects become unprofitable. This is the nuclear option. It would blow a massive hole in Saudi Arabia's own Vision 2030 budget, but it would send a terrifyingly clear message to any other OPEC member thinking of rebellion. Defy the king, and he'll burn the whole kingdom down just to destroy you. And that leads to the third, and maybe the most insidious scenario, the OPEC fracture. Kuwait's rebellion might not start an immediate war, but a slow, creeping decay of discipline. Other countries with big ambitions of their own, like the UAE and Iraq, would be watching very closely. If Kuwait gets away with shattering its quota, why shouldn't they? They also have huge reserves and a desperate need for cash. We could see a domino effect, where member after member starts quietly cheating, then openly flouting their production targets. This would be the end of OPEC as an effective force in the market. The cartel's power is in its unity. If it becomes a free-for-all, its ability to stabilize prices evaporates. The world would lurch back to an era of wild oil price volatility, with insane swings that make long-term investment impossible and wreck national economies. You don't have to look far for the cracks. When Angola left OPEC in late 2023 over quota disputes, it was a huge warning sign that the alliance is already fragile. Kuwait's move could be the final push that sends the whole structure toppling down. Adding another layer to this strategy is Kuwait's downstream expansion. The massive, world-class Al Zour refinery reached its full capacity of 615,000 barrels per day in 2024, turning Kuwait into a record-breaking exporter of products like diesel and low-sulfur fuel oil. This means Kuwait isn't just getting ready to flood the market with crude, it's also moving to compete directly with Saudi Arabia's own huge refining industry, capturing more of the profit and building a more resilient energy empire. It's a sophisticated, multi-front challenge to the established order. This complex chess match of ambition, history, and economics is reshaping the Middle East right now, with huge consequences for the price you pay at the pump and the stability of the global economy. The power dynamics of oil are shifting faster than ever, and understanding these plays is critical. If you want to stay ahead of these seismic shifts in geopolitics and finance, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the forces that truly run the world. The stage is set for a conflict that could define the final era of oil. In one corner, you have Saudi Arabia, the aging king, desperately trying to use its oil wealth to build a future where it no longer needs oil. Its entire strategy hinges on market stability and price control. In the other corner, you have Kuwait, the ambitious challenger, armed with new reserves, new technology, and a history of rogue behavior. It's making a calculated bet that it can carve out a bigger piece of the market, believing the Saudi king is too boxed in by his own domestic agenda to retaliate effectively. This isn't just about barrels and quotas, it's a fundamental challenge to the geopolitical structure that has governed the world's most vital commodity for more than half a century. For decades, the world has run on the assumption that Saudi Arabia calls the shots. But what happens when a player inside the system decides to stop playing by the rules? Is Kuwait about to pull the thread that unravels the entire oil market? The tremors have already begun. The only question is when the earthquake will hit.